Hello, it's Jed at JTS, and today we are fitting an exhaust downflow pipe onto this lovely looking Audi A5 2-litre diesel. Stealth mode this time, black rims, black spoiler, black car. We've had the de-chroming on the windows here as well, so that's high gloss. What else we had? Oh yeah, front splitter added on this morning, and honeycomb grille. So yeah, for those of you who have subscribed to my channel or you watch a couple of videos I do, this is our new workshop. So we've upgraded our premises, a bit more room, hopefully new content. We've got our little office as well, just a little tour, a little waiting area, water fountain, lovely. Anyways, so 2-litre diesel. My last video was on the Audi A5 3-litre V6. So similar kind of setup. However, this is for the 2-litre. So dark side developments again. This pipe will replace the DPF and the cat converter. And secondary pipe acts as a centre pipe, which connects onto this one. And we've got a fit kit in here with gaskets, stuff like that. So yeah, very excited for this video. I found actually online, type it in, not much content. So this is partially why I am creating this video. For anyone who's struggling to find any information on how to fit this DPF downflow pipe, then hopefully I can help. Because from what I can see, it's not a pretty job. Anyway, any comments or any questions, then drop them down and I will get back to you with any answers I've got. So, DPF and cat converter located right at the back of the engine, just as you can see down here. So a bit of a pick to get to because you've got the EGR valve and a cooler in the way. From memory, when I done this job last couple of years ago now for my friend, I'm pretty sure turbo and possibly manifold has to come out. Don't quote me on that because it was a long time ago since I've done this job. But we will go through the process together. I'll stick my head cam on and point you guys in the right direction of how to remove this pain in the arse. I've already removed the airbox down here and one intake for the turbo and scuttle, so they're relatively easy to get off. Once you've got them bits and bobs off, then you can crack on. So we need to start removing all these different plugs, including coolant pipes for the EGR cooler, lambda sensors and DPF pressure sensors. Anything basically in the way, remove. Just be careful, because obviously a lot of the clips are plastic and they are fragile. Vacuum pipe. There you go. For the purpose of this video, I probably will speed it up. And you guys can see what is what, and any questions let me know. Right, so next, coolant pipes. So just a pair of pliers. Remove that one. Make sure you've got a drip tray underneath if you're working inside. Now there's a lot of pressure in there, so I'm just going to remove the expansion tank cap before I get a face full of coolant. Should relieve some pressure. And these pipes can get quite wedged on there, so you've got to use a pair of pliers gently and then. Oh, okay, nothing come out then. Now, in order to remove this EGR cooler, there is two T30 bolts here, so one there and one there, so they need to be removed. That basically holds on this side of the cooler, as you can see. And on the back, underneath these pipes here, you have the exhaust. I can't quite see on the camera. You have a coolant pipe on the back, this one here, so you can use your pliers, and then you've also got a metal pipe here which also needs to be removed. Taking them off should allow access and room to remove this whole cooler. Okay, just to add to this, I pointed out there was 2 bolts here, 1, 2, holding the cooler on, and there was the 2 pipes at the back, which I've removed. Also, there are 2 more around the back. You need a long T30 on a small ratchet, and you can just get your fingers in there. I can't actually show you on the camera. So there's 2 this side, and then 2 that side. Cool. There you go, 1 EGR cooler. So the bolts for this cooler, as I was trying to show you earlier, there's 1 here and there's 1 there, right at the back, so you couldn't even show you on the camera. So 1, 2, you've got 3, 4, and then you've got to take off this bolt in here that goes onto the manifold. Right, from what I can see, I don't think there's going to be enough room between the DPF, you see where it's quite wide here, and the manifold. I don't think that's going to come through. So, like I said previously, I'm going to remove these manifold bolts. They look rusty as hell. As you can see, I've snapped these 2 already, which are quite important. I'm going to weld a plate on there, or you can also kind of drill them out and re-thread them if you want the system to work in 100% factory. And also the turbo comes along with that as well. You've got 3 bolts here which actually hold the downpipe or the DPF and cat to the turbo. 1, 2, 3. I think they're 13mm. You might need some oxyacetylene or heat. Like I said, they're so fucking tight. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put the dash cam onto my head. This car has a rusty old bag of nails, mate. So, this nut, I had to apply heat. This nut, I had to apply heat. This nut is solid, so you've got to be careful. Also, I'll get the camera down here. This heat shield needs to be removed. Unfortunately, the turbo wastegate is in the way. So if you can remove these 3 bolts here, 1, 2, 3, and then that allows you to move this slightly out the way to get a spanner in, just to get that nut off for the heat shield. The reason why I'm doing this is because the turbo, I can't actually disconnect from the manifold because this nut is also completely seized. If any of these do snap, then I'm in trouble. So I'm going to remove this one in situ, so the manifold and the turbo all as one. And that will avoid any more bolts snapping. Okay, so I've discovered that the exhaust manifold and the turbo can't come out together because there is not enough room to get to the bottom bolts on the manifold. The turbo has to be removed to get to the bottom bolts on the manifold. So I've got a spanner on the 2 bolts at the bottom of the turbo, just here. There's 1 there and then 1 the other side, and then this little bugger here is seized on, so I'm gonna have to heat him up and carefully undo him, and that will allow me to remove this turbo. Once the turbo is removed, I can then get access to the bottom of the manifold to remove them bolts. Once it's all clear, and then straight out. Okay, cool, that's the turbo off. So like I said earlier, is these 3 bolts, 1, 2, 3. 1's a nut and 2 are studs underneath. So this manifold here, just use like a 12mm spanner. Right, getting the turbo off was a bit tight, so this DPF was jammed right against the bolts here on the hot side of the turbo, these studs, and I didn't have enough leverage to push the DPF back. So once you do get to the point where the turbo needs to come off, you need to raise the car up in the air if you've got a ramp, if not crawl under. And I'll show you, there's 2 clamps underneath which hold this in place. If you can release them underneath, you can then push this back, which allows you to pull the turbo away, obviously because the studs get stuck in the flange. One manifold sorted. So all we need now is to get this DPF out of the hole. The hole should be big enough now. You see that, like, literally this whole side of the engine is stripped. To be honest with you, it still feels a bit tight. So there's probably a few more pipes. We need to just check down the bottom to make sure nothing's obstructing it. But yeah, that is what is required to make enough room. Okay, if you've got a lift, that's great because it's so much easier. If not, you're on the floor. Things I didn't show you from the top was the disconnection of the turbo. So you've got a few oil feed lines underneath, hence all the oil. And it's easier to get to some of the actual mounting brackets for the turbo to remove it. So that's that end, that's fine. The back end, there's a clamp for the exhaust here, which is on the floor, completely shagged. And these nuts and bolts connect the downpipe up here. I couldn't record it earlier because it was so tight. There's just near the steering column, just here, there's a bracket and a spring you got to remove. 2 13mm spanners. It is a pain in the ass to get to, but that will essentially drop this whole exhaust. I now need to focus on removing these 3 nuts, 1, 2 and 3. So this will then become disconnected, and then I'm hoping with a bit of wiggle we can pull the DPF through the top of the engine. And also there's a pressure sensor, no, temp sensor, sorry, if you can just see it to the side of the gearbox. That also needs coming out. Okay, I've seen one video online. They're struggling to get the actual end of the DPF through past the gearbox. In this case, I have disconnected the steering rack column. So that is that one here. It's just a pinch bolt that goes onto there. And that is giving me a little bit more leeway. And there's a slight bit of movement. If I can push this steering rack column over slightly bit more, we can lever that through, and then the rest of the DPF pulls up through the top. There also is another temp sensor just above the gearbox. You can gain access just through the top and unplug it. It's an orange plug. I think that is going to be the easiest way rather than taking off any gearbox mounts. Failing that, you can drop the gearbox mount to give you a bit more access, but either way, if you've got a ramp, I said it might be easier to remove this mount. But so there's a few adjustments to get this out. It didn't have to be done with removing the gearbox mount. I managed to squeeze it past the steering column rack, like I said. There was an oil pressure sensor. I had to remove it back of the engine, along with the engine hoist mount. And then I had to wiggle around with the turbo because that's still in there. There's a wire still attached to it. Yeah, bit of tweaking, a bit of wiggling. There she is. Ooh. So that was the sensor I was talking about. And that's where I cut at the bottom because these nuts were completely knackered. So yeah. Okay, now what a job that was. Okay, so I've got the downpipe on, lambda sensor in, manifold on, got the turbo back on. A few more bits of wiring to plug back in and a few vacuum pipes. As explained earlier, the two bolts that snap, so the exhaust manifold, the two bolts that bolt the EGR pipe on, actually sheared off. So, because I am remapping this vehicle, I'm doing a EGR delete, DPF delete and a stage 1. Luckily enough, I can blank this off. So in actual fact, I'm going to get rid of this whole EGR and the cooler. So I'm basically going to leave it off. I have modified the coolant pipes. So where the coolant pipe would go into the EGR cooler here, I've now put a new bit of piping in to reconnect it so it goes back through the return here. Usually this pipe would connect to this part and that pipe would connect to this part on the cooler. So yeah, not a standard kind of setup, but it works for me. And also with the cooler and the valve off, you've got a lot more room. So next time if I want to change the turbo or if I want to change the pipe or if it goes wrong, access is there. All I've got to do is remove the air filter and everything's good. Obviously I need to remap it, so tune the vehicle. That's the software I've got, so I can re-upload that. And yeah, job's a good one. Hope that was enough in detail for you. Couldn't get the camera in every angle because obviously the exhaust and underneath the car, getting the GoPro in is difficult. So anything I missed or anything you want advice on, anything to do with tuning or mapping, anything to do with the EGR delete, any questions, if you're stuck, give me a comment down below and I'll see if I can help you. Yeah, all I've got to do now is clean up all this mess, get them pipes back on and wash these bloody hands.